Is there a Sooner or two that could be out of a job this fall? We'll talk about it on today's episode of Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. My name is John Williams. You can follow me on Twitter at John9Williams. My buddy here is Josh Elmer. You can follow him on Twitter at JoshOnRef. You can also hear him Monday through Friday from 9 to noon on the KRF Sports app. And Josh, off the top, we've talked a lot about position battles. We've talked a lot about guys who could come in and threaten for a starting job. At the same time, if someone's going to come in and take a starting job, that means somebody who has been starting is going to potentially lose a starting role. Now, are there guys that need to be worried or need to have a good offseason to sustain their role in the starting lineup for 2024?
Well, yeah, I think there's a couple of names you could look at. And I think one of the names that chose to come back in Woody Washington at corner, if you've got another option that really emerges alongside of Gentry Williams, really both guys at corner, as good as Gentry was, John, the health, right? So those two, I think, in the defensive backfield, a number of names across the defensive line. I think you're sort of on guard there a little bit. We're hopeful, right, that a David Stone, a Jaden Jackson, I don't know, a Nigel Smith or others, and Okoye can join a PJ Adebaware and start taking snaps away at edge. So not necessarily I think there's a number of guys that you have to replace, but just that hopefully Oklahoma's recruited to the point to where it's sort of natural that they're going to lose a couple of snaps.
Yeah, you look at Woody Washington, he's been a good player, but he hasn't yet really ascended to what we would hope a fifth-year senior would look like at cornerback. There's still times where he's getting beat and it's either a mental lapse. You look at the UCF touchdown where he just kind of let his man go late in the first half, and it leads to a big play that they're able to make because Woody Washington kind of bails on his coverage assignment. A good player, solid player. It's good that he's coming back. It gives you a good floor. But if somebody that's one of your young guys that you feel really, really good about, whether it's Makari Vickers, or Jacoby Johnson, or Josiah Wagner, a Kanai Walker, Des Malone, one of these guys comes in and is able to take snaps and seed snaps from Woody Washington, I think you got to have to let natural progression take place. And this is not a slight or hopefully it doesn't come off as disrespectful to Woody. I mean, he's your starter right now, but competitive depth. That's the phrase we heard all last offseason. You're building it. Now you have to let that competitive depth play out and see who emerges and is able to make your defense better. Gentry Williams, really good player when he was healthy. The problem is he didn't stay healthy. He struggled with a shoulder issue all year long, tried to play through it. And that was part of the issue, was that he was trying to play through a shoulder injury. So credit to him for showing that toughness and being able to continue to go out there. But it did kind of hurt his development at times where, okay, he's only in for a few snaps in a game before he gets dinged up and has to miss the rest of the game. Availability is the best ability, according to legendary Hall of Fame coach Bill Parcells. You got to be available. And as good as Gentry Williams is, we got to see an offseason where he stays healthy and then a season where he progresses and is able to remain healthy and stay out on the football field, because it's hard to know what you're going to go into a game with, especially in a game plan, if you're not sure if a guy's going to be available or not. I think you can look along the defensive line. Dejon Terry, Jacob Lacey are coming back. Dejon was probably your starting one tech last year, or at least one of your best ones. He's going to be probably up for that role, your nose tackle role this year as well. But an Ashton Sanders, a Marcus Strong, a Jaden Jackson? Could they come in, emerge, take a starting role from an experienced guy? Possibly. I think that that's going to be a little bit tougher of a task, but I mean, it's definitely within the realm of possibility. And then you look at the cheetah role. As much as I like Deshaun McCullough and even Kendall Dolby, who moonlighted as a cheetah in kind of that nickel corner role, I want to see more out of that position. I want to see more consistency out of that position, more athleticism, an ability to not have to come off the field because of certain circumstances or down in distance or things like that. I want to see a guy that can play all 3 downs. So is that a Lewis Carter? Is that a Samuel Omasigo? Could one of those guys who's an uber athlete emerge and take on that cheetah role? I would like to see that happen. And maybe Deshaun to edge. Sorry, I'm not trying to completely write off Deshaun McCullough, but I'd like to see him full-time at edge because I think that's where long-term his best position could be.
Well, and he was great there year 1 of his college career at Indiana. So maybe that return for him would do him well, or at least just unlocking him as more of a pass rusher on a more frequent basis, and maybe, using him less as, hey, let's lock him into the cheetah, right? I think that Oklahoma saw something to where potentially for Deshaun McCullough, this was the best path to a professional future long-term. And you think back to other players throughout Brent Venable's tenure where that's kind of the ultimate chess piece you move around that has the pass rush ability, sort of has some linebacker traits, and also has maybe some free safety, strong safety type traits. And so you wind up in the cheetah position, but is the light bulb fully going to click on? And if the answer is no, then you have to try other options there. So I don't think that's an unfair suggestion at all. Just to pay off sort of the genesis of some of this conversation, 3 Oklahoma football players who should be replaced. This is via Storman and Norman from Josh Yorish of Fansided. And the 3 that he came up with, Jaron Kanik at linebacker, Jacob Sexton, which I thought was a very curious name, and then Jalil Farouk, which I would also classify as a curious name, though the bowl game, right, for some probably didn't leave folks feeling great. But let's break those 3 down. The first, Kanik, what do you think about that?
With Jaron Kanik, I mean, obviously he lost a lot of snaps to Kip Lewis as the season went along. I think he's still a good player. I think he's still an ascending player. He's getting better year by year. I mean, year 1, we saw flashes from him, but he wasn't able to get off on the field very much because the coach didn't believe he knew the playbook well enough and understood his assignments well enough to be out there on a regular basis, which is why you had 3 linebackers play over 900 snaps, close to 1,000 snaps each. Now going into year 2, higher expectations. I think he played well at times, has to continue to get better. But I think, going into year 3, I think you could see him continue to improve. Again, it's about progression. Football is a developmental game, as Brent Venables likes to say. He's a developing player. He's continuing to get better. Now he's got to continue to show that on the field because he's got a Kip Lewis. He's got a Coben McKenzie. He's got a Samuel Masigo and a Lewis Carter. He's got a really, really, a lot of really good linebackers that are waiting in the wings for opportunities.
And Jacob Sexton to me is a slam dunk. He's going to start for Oklahoma. So I don't see him as someone that should be replaced on the depth chart. Jalil Farouk, I'll entertain a conversation there that maybe if a wide receiver goes a certain direction, one of these young guys really steps up, or one of the guys you signed, if a Zion Kearney, for example, is just that good that you got to play him, then okay, you got to play him. But otherwise, Jalil Farouk is a nice steady hand. I know that we're all living in the world where he fumbled a couple of times, and it cost Oklahoma a lot in its bowl game loss versus Arizona. And he had another fumble that probably shouldn't have happened in another loss for Oklahoma. Now, granted, you could put a little bit of that on Levy and the coaching staff for deciding to try and run the football with a wide receiver. But, okay, there's been some fumble issues, but by and large, that's not a week-to-week thing. It happened in two games that, sure, I'll hear that it cost Oklahoma those losses, but am I convinced that he has this ball security issue that's going to be a prolonged, lingering problem? I don't think that I am. Maybe I should be, but I'm not.
Well, and to me, you got to ask the question, okay, who's replacing him? If you're expecting a true freshman to come in and do that, I mean, I'm going to bet on Jalil Farouk being the starter. Andrew Anthony, he's out. He's still recovering from his ACL injury. Hopefully he's ready by fall camp. If not, that could linger into the season. And then you're looking at Deion Burks, Nick Anderson. I could very much foresee a package where your starting wide receiver trio is Jalil Farouk, Deion Burks, and Nick Anderson, or a Jaden Gibson, or however you want to play this. But I do believe that Jalil Farouk is going to be one of your 3 starting wide receivers when you line up to play football in 2024. So interesting discussion. It's going to be interesting to kind of hear how the camp battles unfold this offseason. But yeah, I'm with you. Jacob Sexton is a slam dunk. Another player that Oklahoma hopes will eventually be a slam dunk starter for him one day. The Sooners met with a 5-star offensive tackle on Wednesday. We'll discuss it next on Locked On Sooners. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. The Oklahoma Sooners coaching staff is off on the recruiting trail, going to great lengths to try and land more 2025 prospects, get to know some 2026 recruits and beyond, as well as they tour high schools across America. One big name that the Oklahoma Sooners met with was Michael Fasusi. I'm going to terribly mispronounce, and I apologize, but I think that's correct. Fasusi, the 5-star offensive tackle prospect in the 2025 recruiting class, met with Brent Venables, Seth Luttrell, Bill Bedenbow. The whole contingent of Sooners coaching staff was there for this big time recruitment. It's one that Oklahoma, got to have.
His huddle highlight tape, I love it. Just starts with an immediate pancake, and it's get to the next level and absolutely decleat somebody. So, and I'm sure he's got a lot in the way of those types of highlights. He's the number 1 offensive tackle in the 2025 class. So he's top of the list. And he said recently to On3's Chad Simmons that he's planning to cut the list down soon, but once he cuts it down, Oklahoma's going to be a part of it. Here's the quote, I'm working on getting my list down. I know Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas, and USC will be up there. Those are 4 schools I've visited. I talk to them a lot, and I'm not sure when I will cut my list down, but those schools will be up there for a long time. I know I like them, end quote. So Oklahoma knows that it's in the mix for Michael Fasusi. Michael Fasusi feels like Oklahoma's going to be in the mix for Michael Fasusi for a long time. And so the Sooners are pulling out all the stops, obviously, as they should, John, to land, again, the top offensive tackle in this upcoming class.
So much has been made about the 2024 recruiting, class along the offensive line and whether or not Bill Bedenbow has recruiting chops or not. This one will go a long way to silence a lot of the critics. Now, if it goes the other way, those critics will just get a little bit louder. But I think if he's able to win this, I think it should really put to rest any doubt about Bill Bedenbow's ability to recruit. And there's a lot of reasons why kids want to come play for him. Some of it is the developmental aspect of it. And I think some of it's the relational part of it too. You see the guys that are in the NFL that Coach Bedenbow, coached and developed. They have a great appreciation for what he was able to do in their lives during their time in Norman. And the track record speaks for itself. So if Fasusi is looking at that track record, it makes a lot of sense to come play for Oklahoma. Now, he'll also get to play in the SEC against some of the best defensive ends and edge rushers in the nation as he looks to build his resume and build his profile for draft prospects down the road. So, I mean, there's a lot to like, obviously, about Oklahoma, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could play early as well. Maybe not as soon as, week 1 of his true freshman season in 2025, but you might see him develop and emerge as a player, at some point in that season or the 2026 season. So there's a path to playing time. There's opportunity. The development's there. But if Bill Bedenbaugh was able to come out and win this one, that would be huge for him, for the Sooners. And I think it'd allow the fan base to kind of like chill a little bit on Coach B.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a big time recruiting win for him. And, again, the way that this last recruiting class wound up, it closed pretty well. Now, it didn't close with Grant Bricks, which would have, I think, helped satiate the Sooner appetite, right? I mean, it feels like Sooner fans put a lot of stock into that recruitment, and understandably so, right? Regarded as one of the top offensive linemen in this past class, but they went and they got an Eddie Pierre-Louis late. They saw a big boost, a big jump in the final rankings for Eugene Brooks. So it might have wound up better than maybe they thought all along with, again, the late recruiting win, and just the evaluation itself kind of seems like it earned a little bit more respect before the class here is totally finalized in 2024. But having said all that, it's pretty obvious from the fan base, there's some heat to land somebody like this in Fasusi. And so not going to sit here and call the race for Oklahoma. There's a long ways to go in this thing. And there's some big time names, such as your arch rival that he's directly told us, right, alongside Oregon and USC, are going to be in the mix for this recruitment. He knows those 4 for sure. And yet, obviously, you can't win the recruitment if you're not in the recruitment to begin with. So that at its beginnings is a nice sign.
And you got to worry a little bit about Mizzou as well. He visited Columbia recently and apparently really, really liked the visit that he had. And, Mizzou's been a bit of a thorn in your side in recruiting over the last little bit, whether it's with, Caden Green or Williams Nwaneri. Isaiah Mose is another one that they're kind of trying to pull out from under your recruiting rug, so to speak. So got to keep an eye on the Tigers a little bit on this one too, but he's a big time prospect that everybody's going to be coming after. If Nick Saban were still around, I'd worry a little bit more about Alabama, but obviously with, Kalen DeBoer, you got to worry about it. But to me, maybe a little bit less so at this point, but yeah, it's going to be a big time recruitment to follow. He might be kind of the David Stone, Williams Nwaneri of this recruiting cycle, because you've already got your quarterback locked up. You've already got some really good wide receivers locked up. I think everybody's going to have all eyes on Michael Fasusi as the 2025 cycle plays out. Who else do we have all eyes on? Well, that's Porter Moser, but Bob Stoops says, hey, maybe take a chill pill on Porter a little bit. Tap the brakes. Let's talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners, your team every day. Again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. So Porter Moser, the Oklahoma Sooners take a bad beat at the hands of the Texas Longhorns by 15 points in the Lloyd Noble Center in front of a pretty packed house. Just an unfortunate second half where they get outscored by 16. They shoot less than 40% from the field, while Texas shoots better than 54% from the field and 62% from 3-point range. So it was definitely a letdown performance, disappointing when you kind of had everything in front of you and an opportunity to make a statement. The Oklahoma Sooners kind of fall flat in this game.
The game is tied up 52 apiece with 12:08 to play. And obviously from there, it's 23-8 Texas the rest of the way. So it fell apart for Oklahoma late. 9 out of 12 shooting, I think, from that point forward from Texas, and 3 out of 12 for Oklahoma. The battle on the boards all night, Oklahoma got it handed to them pretty good. The final tally there on the backboards for Oklahoma, a -16, 40-24. Texas beat OU on the glass. And believe it or not, going into this thing, Oklahoma was 22nd nationally in rebounding margin. So though Oklahoma, I wouldn't describe, John, as this team that's littered with, McDonald's All-American bigs. We know they're not. They've been a good rebounding team. The guards have rebounded down and helped Oklahoma there, and they've, generally speaking, been good in that department. But they were terrible against Texas, and Texas shot it well, and Oklahoma didn't defend well enough coming down the home stretch. When your opponent shoots 50% and they're 44% from three-point range, you can call it a good shooting night, and it was for Texas. Sometimes opponents make shots, not to take that away from Texas, but clearly Oklahoma wasn't dialed in enough defensively either, and they weren't fishing enough offensively coming down the home stretch. I did sense the freak out from the fan base, and so it's nice to see Bob Stoops trying to cool that down a little bit, because ultimately it's OU, Texas. It's a very good Texas team. It's an incredible Big 12, but there was a lot that felt like it got put into this game, right? Because it's come to the LNC, support Porter Moser, support OU basketball. And we've seen this song and dance, not just this season or during the Porter Moser era. It's kind of an OU basketball thing. You get the pom-poms out, you cheer for folks to come pack the LNC, and then they do, and there's a dud like this versus Texas, and people are asking the question, well, why should I give this support? Why should I be there? Well, it's something you gotta have faith in the way Porter is building this thing, which is what I think Bob Stoops is saying is don't freak out over one game to Texas.
Yeah, it was a disappointing loss, and I totally hear what Bob Stoops is saying. And at some point, you just support it because you support it. You look at that Cincinnati crowd that they had when Oklahoma came to town last weekend. It was a really, really good crowd for an unranked Cincinnati team. That's a community that knows how to support its basketball program. I mean, that place was packed. It was rocking. It was a really, really good basketball environment for a Saturday midday tip. That's where we got to get to. Win or lose, we got to continue to build toward, support and showing up and having good attendance, because eventually the wins will come and you'll want to be there for it. But I get kind of a little bit of the cantankerous nature of Oklahoma fans and Sooner Nation. That's like, show me something, let's win a big one, especially when you bring us all out. They've had letdowns in the game against North Carolina and Kansas and now Texas. You go on the road and you lose to TCU, and that's a bit of a bummer, but you're still one of the top 20 teams in the nation. You're still heading towards an NCAA tournament bid. You're still, right in the mix in the Big 12. I mean, yeah, you're 3-3 in Big 12 play, but last I looked at the standings, I mean, that just puts you 2 games out of first place. So you're still kind of right in the spot that you need to be to make a run. You got to just keep getting better. Some of it was just Oklahoma killing themselves by not being able to get into the paint. And so I appreciate that Bob Stoops coming out and supporting Porter Moser. I mean, he kind of knows what it's like to go through a bit of a down season, whether it's back in the Paul Thompson year where, okay, things didn't go according to plan, but hey, they still won the Big 12. Or if you go back to, the year Sam Bradford got hurt. Okay. Yeah. Everybody understands Bradford got hurt. You got to change your quarterback, but I mean, that doesn't change necessarily the expectations at Oklahoma. You just go through it and it's disappointing, but you come out the other side and you are better, or you hope that you're going to be better in the long run. So yeah, I mean, Joe Castiglione, he's a patient man. I don't think that he's going at this thing from game to game and one possession to the other and trying to decide Porter Moser's future. I think what we're seeing is a really good step in the right direction from this program, but they just may not be ready yet to ascend into, the top 10 and be one of the top 10 teams in the nation. They've still got some building to do, a lot of building blocks that still have to arrive in Norman for them to continue to create a program that's going to be a consistent winner and be able to win in some of these big time matchups.
Well, and I guess it would be us doing our due diligence to just read you what Coach Stoops tweeted. He quote tweeted the refs post-game remarks from Porter Moser. So a tweet of Porter Moser saying disappointed because the fans were awesome and I've worked my tail off to get people in here. And obviously we all know it didn't go the way any of us wanted versus Texas. Bob Stoops quotes that and says, Sooners, keep supporting this guy, this program, and this team. It will keep turning in a positive way. I'm going to keep coming to the LNC. So, yeah, pretty cool to see Coach Stoops sticking up for OU basketball. And I get it. We kind of do this song and dance this time of the calendar year, and it turns some people off because they're like, all I hear about is the LNC stinks and we need a new arena and come support the team, come support the team. Well, why don't you win for me? But this is a good basketball team. And this year, I think we have to look at this thing. We can't get caught up in OU Texas. Let's try and go steal one there down in Austin in the regular season finale. I understand the emotions that get caught up and tied into that game, but this is a game-to-game league right now in the Big 12. Truly, it's I mean, you look at Oklahoma's schedule coming up, and John, I mean, immediately you got a chance to feel good about this week in some way, shape, or form if you beat Texas Tech at home over the weekend. Then you go to Kansas State. Then you go to UCF, who, oh, by the way, beat Kansas there. Then you play BYU. Okay, you got a bad Oklahoma State team, but it's Oklahoma State and it's Bedlam, right? Then you got Baylor. Then you got Kansas. Then you got Iowa State and Houston and Cincy and Texas. I mean, the schedule is loaded up, so you got to take it. Truly, it's cliche, but this year with this league, there's just not a lot of like, okay, we think pretty strongly that's a game that we're going to go get. You got to take it one at a time. And if you can get one, then you feel great. And if you could split this week, even though it's at home, that's not all bad.
No, it's not. And again, this team is still in a really, really strong position to make the NCAA tournament. Now they got to take this loss on the chin, move forward, go and try and get that one back against Texas down the road, but more immediately try and win a top 20 matchup against Texas Tech. And if you do that, you kind of start, I don't know, you ride this roller coaster of emotions, but you start to feel a little bit better about where things are headed. And there's a lot to like about what this team is doing this year. They're an athletic team. They're fun. I mean, Jalen Moore has really turned it on over the last couple of weeks in particular, and just high flying dunks almost every game from him at this point. Just a really, really fun team to watch. Yeah, they're going to have some stinkers. It's still a young team at times with Milo Suzan and Otega Owe, Javian McCollum making the jump from Siena to Big 12 basketball. They're going to have some bad days. And that day, last Tuesday, I guess, against Texas was a bad day. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all platforms and on YouTube. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Josh on Twitter at JoshOnRef, myself at John9Williams. The show is at Locked On Sooners. But until next time, he's Josh Helmer. I'm John Williams. Boomer Sooner.